Hello, today I've got a really fun project for you that is quick and easy and really great for stash busting. So today I'm going to show you how to make these really cute granny square coasters. I am making a couple of sets of these for a fair I'm about to do, and I'm really pleased with the way that they came out, so I figured I would show you how I did it. I am using 3 colors of CotLin yarn. This is from We Crochet or Knit Picks. It is a cotton and linen composition, so 70%, I think it's Tenguise cotton, 30% linen. I wanted to use this one because these were all leftovers from some cardigans I made earlier, I guess it was last year. And I knew that this would hold up well if you needed to clean the coasters for any reason. So I really liked the way that the colors played together anyway. So I'm going to show you how to make one of these. We're going to start with a very basic granny square. There are a zillion ways, it feels like, to do a granny square. For the ones that I'm doing, I always start with a slip knot. Some people use like a magic loop or a double magic loop. For me, especially with something that is made from cotton, that is not going to move around a ton, I just prefer to do 3 chains to start it. So I've got my 3 chains, and then I'm going to double crochet into this center chain. I'm going to do that 3 times, also leaving myself a little bit of a tail to hold on to. That's the second double crochet, and this is the third. And then now I'm going to chain 3 and do the same thing into that center stitch. 3 more double crochets. And it gets a little easier to see that stitch with each kind of cross point of your star that you're making. Now I know that if you are a newer crocheter, or if you're a particularly tight crocheter, it can be hard to go into that first chain. So however you make your granny squares will be fine for this pattern, but I'm just showing the way that is my preferred method. So since I've done 2, I'm going to go ahead and make my next corner with 3 chains, and then I'm going to go back into that center stitch for 3 more double crochets. And again, some people choose to make their granny squares with just 2 chains in between each cluster. Got 3 again right there. This is just my preferred method. And then I'm going to do my last cluster of 3 double crochets back into that center stitch. Chain 3. And then I'm going to cut my little tail, leaving myself a little bit wiggle room. The center color, whatever color you're using for the very center of your granny square, if you're doing them like I did, where all of mine have the same color in the middle, it takes very, very little yarn. You could also make a completely solid front and a contrasting back. I'm considering doing that as well. The possibilities are endless. So since I have my little tail, I'm going to slip stitch right into the top of the first double crochet that I did. Flip stitch like that. Then I'm going to pull the tail through right here, pulling it nice and tight. Then I'm going to give myself a little knot. Clearly, Scoot is walking around in the background. I'm sure you can hear his nails and his little collar. Perfect. So now I've got my center color. I'm going to switch to my next color. And this is another, let me get this gray string out of the way. This is another personal preference thing for me. Because I'm going to have tails for each color change that I do, I usually start my next color in a different corner than where I started. There are lots of ways that you can do that, but for me, I'm going to come over here to the opposite corner, going to insert my hook, pull up the yarn, leaving myself a nice long tail. I'm going to chain 2, And then I'm gonna go ahead with my normal granny square setup. So I'm going to double crochet 3 times into this first side of the corner. 1, 2, 3, crocheting over the tail of my my next color of yarn. So it's kind of tucked in right there. Chain 3, and then double crochet right back into that same corner. And I've made my next corner for this. I'm going to tuck that tail now behind, and I'm going to continue that around. I am going to chain 1 in between this corner and my next. Again, sometimes people don't add a chain 1 in between the granny squares. Complete personal preference there. It'll give you a tighter, less airy granny square if you do decide not to chain, and if you do decide to only do 2 chains in the corners instead of 3. So I'm doing the same thing here that I did before. Got 2 chains, or I'm sorry, I've got 3 chains right here, 2 clusters of 3, chain 1, and I'm going to come over in my next corner, and this time I'm going to tuck the tail kind of forward so I can crochet over it. Because these are coasters, they're not necessarily going to get a ton of friction, so I'm not as worried about my ends coming out and having to weave them in super well like maybe I would with a blanket or a top. And because our granny square is double-sided, there's not going to be a lot of friction on these. So I'm going to do all of my tails where I crochet over them. And because I've knotted them before I even tucked my tail, I'm really not worried about the granny square coming apart. So chain 1, I'm going to do another cluster if I don't split my yarn. Chain 3. And we're all the way back around here. Chain 1, after I finish the last cluster, give myself a little tail, cut my yarn, put that color off to the side, and we're gonna do the same thing we did before. So we're going to slip stitch into the top right here, then pull the yarn through and knot it. That way it's not going anywhere. Once I've crocheted over my ends for one color, I usually go ahead and clip them so I have fewer ends in my way. And then a lot of times with this first tail that I crocheted over, I will like go into the back side of the stitches, pull the yarn through, and then knot it just to make sure it's not going anywhere. You definitely don't want to put work into something just to have it go away. All right, so now we're going to do our last color. Also, how cute are these colors together? I've got, I think this one's called Ash. The red is called Pomegranate. And then I have another full skein here of the kind of melon color. It is called Conch. Very cute. All right, last one. So we're gonna do the same thing we did here. We're just gonna finish it a little bit differently. So I'm gonna go pretty fast. She says, as then she goes pretty slow. We're gonna go all the way around like we did before. In fact, I will meet you right back here whenever I am done with the clusters of this round. All right, so I've gone all around and now I've done my last cluster right here. I'm going to chain 1, and slip stitch just the way that we've normally done to the top of the stitch. However, instead of cutting my yarn before doing that, we're actually going to do a row of single crochet all the way around. So I'm going to chain 1, and then every place that there is a double crochet, so for all of these double crochet clusters of 3, you're going to have a single crochet in the top of each of those double crochet stitches. And then in the corner, when there are 3 chains, you're going to single crochet 3 times. Whenever there is a chain 1 in between your clusters, you are going to single crochet into those as well. And we're going to do that all the way around. Once we have finished this, we will cut our yarn, slip stitch into our first single crochet, tie it off, and then I will show you how we will do the back side of our granny crochet coaster. Okay, so we're finished with the front of our coaster. Cute little granny square part. I went ahead and clipped all of my ends, and so we're good to go there. But because these are double-sided, now we have to add the back part. And for this, we're going to be making a closed or a solid granny square. And then we're going to attach it in a really cool way. So for that, we're going to start the same way that we did with our granny square for the front. So however you did your granny square for the front, if you used 2 chains in between each corner and you didn't use a chain, well, that won't be as big of an issue, but however you did the first setup square for your granny square, you're gonna do the same thing here. So I chained 3, I've got my 3 for my cluster, I'm gonna chain 3 here and just go around. Working my way around our solid little granny square. Trying not to lose my hook in the process. And whatever color you do for the back, you don't have to use the last color used for the border. If you were doing a solid, if you were just doing one color for the front of your coaster, you might want to use like a contrasting color for the back. Your choice here on what color you decide to use for the back. It will also be the same color that you use for your border though, so just take that into consideration when deciding. All right, so I'm almost done with this setup row. And this is where things are going to change. So I've done what I usually do, but I didn't cut my yarn. I'm going to chain 2, and then everywhere that there is a double crochet for my next row, I'm going to double crochet into that stitch. So that's 3 right here. And then when I get into the corners, I'm only going to double crochet 2 before doing my corners. The reason why is with our traditional granny square, you see how it kind of comes over into that gap. If you did that for a solid granny square, it would make your corners really wavy. It would make them flare out. How do I know, you ask? It's because I have done it that way with trial and error, figuring out the best way to do a solid granny square. So I've got 2 right here in the first part of my corner. I'm still going to be chaining 3, and then I'm going to do 2 more right here. And then I will be doing the rest the same way. So however many granny square rows you did on the front of your coaster, whether you did 3 the way that I'm doing, or maybe you made yours bigger with a smaller yarn, or maybe you are making a placemat or something cool that's a lot bigger, you're going to do the same amount of rows on the back, or the same amount of rounds. So just make sure that you are keeping a note of that. However many you do on the front is how many you're going to do at the back. For this, we're gonna be doing 3 rows, 1, 2, 3, and then our single crochet row, and I will meet you right back here to show you how we are going to attach the front and the back. It's my favorite part. Okay guys, here's my favorite part. So I've made my solid granny with my 3 rows of double crochet and then 1 row of single crochet all the way around. I slip stitched them together, my last stitch and my first stitch, but I did not cut my yarn. Don't cut your yarn yet, because this is really cool. You're gonna take the front of your coaster, so the traditional granny square that we made first, and you're gonna put the wrong sides together. So your pretty sides are facing out. Now, with your yarn, and this is where it's gonna get a little bit tricky, so I'm gonna try to make sure that I can show you really clearly. You are going to go into this loop. Here, let me show you with the scissor blades. You're gonna go into just this part, can y'all see it, of the loop. You're not gonna go through both the way that you usually do, but you're gonna do that on the 2 sides that are facing each other. So I'm gonna come in through just that loop on the front, and then also on the back. The first one is the hardest because it's the same stitch that you did your slip stitch. So just just the back loop. Okay, so you've got 2 loops from the squares, and then your working yarn. You're gonna yarn over, pull through your 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2. So you're making a single crochet border holding the 2 together. So I'm going to try to show you again, and it'll be easier on this one theoretically and on all the other ones. So these are the 2 loops that you're going into, and then you're just single crocheting them together. You're going to do that all the way around. Try to show it slow again. Those are the 2 loops that you're working into. And you're gonna go all the way around your work. For this seaming row, I guess we can call it, the single crochet row where you're putting them together, you're not adding any stitches. So you're just going into the stitches already made. You're not doing extra stitches around the corner or anything like that. The hardest part, besides finding that first set to go into for this row, is making sure that where your squares are, that they line up together. So wherever your jog is in the back where you've been slip stitching them together, it does not have to be in the corner, it can be anywhere on your square. But when you put them together, you could use a stitch marker or something like that to hold them together so that you're making sure that you're going into the same stitch on both sides. That way your work is not off center or anything like that. So we're going to be doing this all the way around, and then we're going to be finishing with a my favorite type of finishing, my favorite border, a reverse single crochet border. So I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. I'll meet you back here after you've worked your way around your coaster. Look at it, it's now together. Now, for the last step, we're gonna be doing this kind of, this kind of frillier edge. If you like the way that this looks just like this, where it's very clean and it doesn't have those little almost scallops on the edges, you could totally cut the yarn and stop right here and everything is secure. Like, it's not gonna come apart. You have put it together. But I like the little extra. And the other thing, I don't know how well you can tell, but you get these cute little ridges from the way that we put it together. I love it. So for the reverse single crochet, also called the crab stitch, you're going to be working the opposite way that you normally crochet. So if you're a right-handed crocheter and you usually work from right to left, this stitch you're going to be working left to right, backwards if you're a left-handed crocheter. So we have slip stitched into the top of our stitch right here. We're going to chain 1 and then we're going to be moving this way if you're right-handed. So the way that I usually do a reverse single crochet is that I do it in every other stitch. That is the way we'll be doing it here, except for the corners where we'll be doing it in every stitch. So for our first stitch, instead of going right here, we're actually going to be coming over here. So you're going to insert your hook into both loops of your single crochet. You're going to grab the yarn right here, pull it through. So you've got 2 loops on your hook right now. Yarn over, pull through both. I'm going to do that again. So because we're doing this in every other stitch, you're not going right here. You're going to go 1 stitch over, insert your hook to both loops, grab the yarn, pull it through. So now you have 2 on your hook, yarn over, pull through both. I'm going to do it in the next stitch, or we're going to skip one the way we have been doing it, just like that. And you'll see these cute little scallops right there. Now, since we're at the corner, I've done this stitch. I'm going to go into the very next stitch. I'm not going to skip one. Do the same thing I've done before. Next stitch, insert my hook, pull up a loop there, and then I'm going to continue all the way around. So I'm going to skip the next one because we're now out of the corner. Skip the next one. Do that until we get to the next corner. I love this stitch because 1, it looks fancy and cute, and 2, it doesn't take up a lot of yarn, and it's pretty fast, especially when you do it in every other stitch. So now we're at the corner again. I'm going to do it in every stitch. You could do it in every stitch all the way around. You're just going to get a much frillier edge. So that was 1, 2, 3 close together. Just get the next one. Go all the way around. And as we work our way around our granny square, again, this would work for any size granny square that you did. So if you did one that has 4 rows, you're going to use the same method. We're now at a corner, so I'm going to go into every stitch. There we go. Now I'm going to go back to my normal way. If you did placemats, this would also work. And this is a border that I use a lot, whether I'm finishing off a cute coaster. I've used this on baby blankets. I've used this on cowls. I'm trying to remember if I've used this on a top before. Probably. It took me a little bit to learn the stitch, and I definitely did not learn it when I read the instructions for it, but once I saw a video on how to do it, I was like, oh, I understand. Now the name makes sense. And now we are already almost back to our beginning. All right, so I've worked my way around. Hold it up to you, I'm starting to lose the light. I'm now going to cut my yarn, leaving myself a nice little tail. I'm gonna pull the yarn through right here. And then for this stitch, it looks a little bit better if you pull it from the front to the back, just like that. And then we're going to come back here, tie it off. You know I'm gonna knot it because I don't want to lose all of our great work. I'm actually gonna knot it twice. And then what I'm gonna do, because this is double-sided, I'm going to pull that yarn through so that my end and my knot is tucked in on the inside, and cut my yarn. And with that, guys, you've got the instructions on how to make these adorable granny square coasters. For this, I used a size G hook, which is a 4mm hook with a decate weight of yarn. Whatever yarn you used, if you used a worsted weight yarn or a fingering weight yarn, just make sure you change your hook size accordingly. And if you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you like videos like this, subscribe. Let me know what you want to see next, and I will see you next time. Bye, guys.